Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Joshua, and I'll be teaching you how to build a valuable skill. But first, let's grab some tea and sip with me. Good stuff. Anyways, some background why I built this list is because I had some family and friends who reached out to me and they asked how do they like get a skill that they could accurately or best communicate it to the recruiter or the interviewer or whomever, or even at least put the skill in the resume in a way that they can at least land that first interview. And so I spin this list up at the moment. Like it's not like it's some stuff that I could like at the top of my head I could consider had helped me land my interviews for one job to another, or even get the interview in the first place if I put it in my LinkedIn profile or resume. So excuse me. So the first thing you want to consider is what are the 10 baby steps for that skill? As a test engineer, I have to consider like if I want to learn about a test framework, some things I have to understand are, I should go point by point. So for the 10 baby steps, some common things that you want to consider are the materials and the platform. So back to me as a test engineer, some things I want to consider about the platform materials is what sort of programming programming languages that it accepts, what sort of what sort of programming languages does it accept? How can I run in my MacBook or laptop? What sort of libraries do I have to download to get the test framework running? Stuff like that. Now, if you're not an engineer, let's just think of another example. Let's say you want to be a social media manager. Maybe you want to learn, maybe you have to know, the materials you might need, or platforms, excuse me, might be YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Make sure you have an account for all of those. And maybe for materials, you want to have a microphone that has good audio. Perhaps you want to have Audible that could process the sound so that it could come clearly when you edit it. Some video editing tools, maybe iMovie, which is not so good, I heard, but you know what I mean. Next, you want to learn the concepts or actions. So what do I mean by that? So you want to know how to use that skill. So if I'm a test engineer, back to me, using a test engineer, if I want to learn how to use a testing framework, I want to know maybe how to create some assertions. How can I call a certain API from other software? Maybe how to run it in a CI/CD pipeline, and how do I have it correctly represent? How does it report the test results? So, and how would that report look like? And also how to use the page object model design so that the tests are laid out in a way that even a developer or other people can use it, so that other people can use it and understand what the results are, so they could fix or maintain the system that they work with. Now, if you're not an engineer, maybe I might consider, let's just say you are a businessman. Some things you want to consider is how to create a great elevator pitch. And within those 10 baby steps, some things you have to consider are probably how do you communicate, how do you control your volume or timing or pacing of your language, what words you should choose so that you can grab your audience's or customers' attention. Next, you want to have a proof of concept. In the 10 baby steps, you should at least have this final step, proof of concept. The proof of concept, it could also be called a deliverable. So back to me as a test engineer, maybe I want to know, I already mentioned it, how does it create that report? Or how can it create that report using a CI/CD pipeline, or when it gets automated? How do I run all the tests in the first place? Now, if I'm not an engineer, let's go back to the social media manager example. Let's just say how you want to upload your video or audio into the platform you use. How do you put it into Twitter? How do you put it into Instagram? How do you upload it? And how do you add the tag so that it could reach to certain audiences that they might value whatever you are marketing? So these 10 baby steps, maybe some things to consider, how do you even find them? is like when I'm a test engineer, when I want to go to the test framework, usually they have a documentation page that are maintained by the developers of the test framework. And they have a tutorial page that lists those, you have a tutorial page that lists like each step. It's almost like a chapter in itself of what concept you're learning, like assertions or reporting, stuff like that. But for other people who might be like social media managers or maybe some sort of businessman or an analyst, maybe the information other ways you can do that is when you Google it or you read some books about it, you notice some chapters have some overlapping themes that you feel like it's tangible for you to understand. So it's a lot of A/B testing there, but I'm sure that with some simple Google searches, going through each YouTube tutorial, you might see some chapters and themes that you might easily pick up. Next, actions are louder than words. This kind of ties in when you do these 10 baby steps. I mean, it's good enough if you read about it, but it's better if you actually perform it. But it's hard to perform all of them and retain that knowledge. So what I usually do is I start with 2 to 3 baby steps that I could understand in the first place. What I mean by that is like, maybe I just want to write a test that do these certain assertions over and over again until I understand how to use, to the full extent, how these assertions work. And just small stuff at a time. And I could do that to the point naturally that I don't have to think about it too much. And then I can work on 2 to 3 more baby steps. Same thing as if you are let's think of a better example other than social media manager. Could I think of one right away? I'll just make up one. Maybe you want to be a storyteller. Let's just say that you could control the volume of your story. Like, some people, they won't be interested to what you hear if you keep a monotonous delivery of your story. Like, hello, my name is, this character walked into the woods and stuff like that. But if you make it like change your volume and you keep it natural, like the character walked into the woods and suddenly there was a monster. It sounds much more interesting that way. And then if you could work on it to become natural, you could control your delivery with other things like, I guess, the pacing of the story. And also like how to properly input silence in certain parts to create suspense. And then you keep building just 2 to 3 baby steps until you can reach that proof of concept at the end. Finally, now you have a basic idea of how your skill works. You want to almost put a stamp of approval. You need that stamp of approval from others that you could actually perform it. But, after you do these 2 steps, you might not be at that stage where if you talk to an interviewer, they might see you like, oh, you tangibly understand that skill. You still need some people to almost give you that validation that you know how to use that skill. And what I mean by that is you have to grow through people you know. Usually you could try to go to student groups or some sort of community groups or events that can help you, give you these opportunities where you can actually enact those skills. And so usually those type of things that I mentioned have a lower barrier of entry than actually getting that first job in the first place. But they still have that sort of like branding that gives you more credibility when you present your skill. Like, I did this for a student group. For example, like if I want to get my first job, how I got my first job to be an engineer, I had to actually understand how to use, the first skills that I worked on was with Java and Android. And to make sure that I get my validation that I actually know how to use my skills, I joined a medical device center to build an app for rhinoplasty. I also joined a Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers student group club to build some sort of video games using fruit. Like you press a fruit to play some video games like Pac-Man. And I made that video game set for middle schoolers so they could spawn interest into the STEM field. And you see, like with those sort of things, it builds some sort of beautiful natural story that will grab the interest of your interviewers, and it'll make it much more, you stand out from the others when you go into these interviews for your first job. Um, I guess if you are a businessman, join some business groups. If you want to be a marketer, perhaps try to join some, maybe try to help out your business, like promote how to promote their business through social media platforms, like offer them that you do for free for a reference. That's what some ideas I think in my head, but I'm sure that your student groups or even your friend family circle, they might have some sort of interesting things. You have to go and talk and reach out to have this happen. So and if you don't know how to talk to people, there are a lot of great ways you can learn how to talk to people through books. It's kind of funny. I mean, I'm not even a good talker myself, but I learned certain concepts that if I repeat them over and over again, that to the point that it comes so natural that people won't even know that you're robotically doing it. Okay, and tying with this growth through people you know, you have to know how to metricize when you work with step 3. What do I mean by that? So you want to get numbers, like you will be able to count or track your progress through number 3, which is growth through people you know, like enact your skill there. You want to have some sort of progress or numbers that you can present to someone who has that skill. Like, let's just say for me as an engineer, if I talk to an engineering manager or a senior engineer, I'll be able to have numbers that they will understand what works. But I also have to have numbers for people without that skill. So I'll give you an example. Back to let's just say I want to be an engineer, excuse me, and I'm being interviewed by an interviewing engineering manager. I might say, like, I was able to switch test frameworks, experiment between, let's just say, Selenium WebDriver and WebDriver IO. And I found WebDriver IO to perform faster and has better UI, better design patterns, and it's also it's faster to run these tests compared to WebDriver, and it has more stability. That's stuff that I think that an HR person might not understand, but if I told them that I could save minutes through I was able to save minutes through performing certain things or augmentations that the engineering manager might understand, he might say, oh, this guy really knows his stuff. This is great. And when you perform it through, when you helped others with that skill. Now, if I were to tell an excuse me, HR person, perhaps perhaps I would say that how did I do that? I'm trying to remember. Maybe I told them, like, I emphasize my soft skill of ownership or accountability working with other frameworks. Let's just say that I say that I contributed 50% more tests to this test framework that increased confidence for 30 developers in my company. That might be something that the HR person might know. So you have to be able to present numbers that will be able to grab the attention of both the technical and non-technical people, of the people who will be interviewing you. And I guess, through experience or A/B testing through many interviews, you might be able to tell from the response of the person whether which numbers do appeal to them, which numbers do not. Of course, if you're watching this video because you want to prepare for your next interview right away, just think of it this way. You might fail a lot through many interviews, but all you need is just one to land that one. And of course, it might not be your dream job, but it could be a great stepping stone and great learning experience where it could help you easily transition to the next dream job that you want to go. So anyways, I hope this helps. Go ahead and take a screenshot, and I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers.